Hey guys, it's Jordan here from SwitchWatch. How are you all doing today? Now, today's review is of Blade Strangers on the Nintendo Switch. Before we get into the review, don't forget to click that subscribe button for all the latest and greatest Nintendo Switch reviews. Let's get on with it. If there's one genre that you don't see too often in the indie game scene, it's fighters. Sure, you do get the odd one or two once in a while, but compared to the 2D platformer genre, they're like a drop in the ocean. Other games of similar indie origins on the Switch are few and far between, with only the likes of the very limited One Strike and the more Smash Bros-esque Brawlout. Blade Strangers is a 1v1 fighter from indie stalwart Nicholas, and it may just be the best casual fighter on the Switch yet. There is a story to Blade Strangers, or should I say stories, since each of the 14 characters have their own little story. They all revolve around some weird multi-dimensional technological nonsense that involves supercomputers calling forth a hero to battle against the all-conquering Lina, who wants to take over and eat everything. It's all ludicrous, of course, with little substance, and I think that's fine. There are 7 stages for each character, with only very small story points between stages as characters converse with each other. Most of the stories are very formulaic and tend to follow a set pattern, and I think you'll be skipping a lot of the stuff once you've played through 3 or 4 characters, since you'll be seeing a lot of the same stuff. Each story will probably take you about 20 to 30 minutes to finish, depending on how tough you find the opponent, so you're looking at about a good 5 or 6 hours worth just from the story mode alone, on one difficulty level. I kind of like the fact that they're not going into the story too much. It's there as a means, but it's never dwelled upon. When compared to BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, which I reviewed for the website, I honestly couldn't bear the never-ending trivial story nonsense that just went on for hours. Blade Strangers doesn't overstep the mark by taking the cross-universe, interdimensional story seriously. It's simple and tongue-in-cheek, and that's all it really needed to be. The only disappointment is the lack of a good ending. Each character has such a minimal ending or reward for completing their story, which almost makes it not worthwhile doing at all. Unlike something like the Tekken series, where you get an awesome cutscene at the end, Blade Strangers gives you almost nothing, and I find that a huge omission. If you're a connoisseur of classic iconic indie games, then Blade Strangers' roster is pretty much a wet dream for you. Sure, there are probably too many characters from the very average beat-em-up Code of Princess, but that's always going to be the case considering this is from the developer of that game. Indeed, the most interesting indie additions were more likely thanks to Nicholas's suggestions once they jumped aboard as publisher. Still, Shovel Knight, Cave Story, Binding of Isaac, and As Your Striker Gunvolt are some of the most elite indie series around, and it's great to have them all together in one fighting roster. As for how they play, well, mostly very nicely. On a scale of how complicated of a fighter this is, Blade Strangers is more on the simpler side. There are no ridiculous combos or inputs needed in Blade Strangers, something which I and the rest of the casual fighter fans will be pleased about, but maybe more hardcore fighting fans will find it a little off-putting. If you play Super Smash Bros, then you'll probably be right at home with this one. In Blade Strangers, you hold one of the attack buttons and choose a direction. Each direction input performs a different attack. It's super simple, but honestly this is how I like it. Fighting games are fun, but they lack accessibility in my opinion. The most recent BlazBlue game tried something similar with simplicity, but in that, I didn't feel totally connected to the gameplay. Blade Strangers succeeds for me though. While it was simple enough to pull off, I still felt like I was doing something myself, and it was all in my hands rather than being an automated thing. There are slightly more complicated things, but nothing that wouldn't take a couple of minutes to get to grips with. As the characters duke it out, you'll each have a super power gauge at the bottom of the screen that fills up at increasing tiers, allowing you to pull off a small handful of super moves by pressing buttons together at the same time. If you're low on health, this gauge will also include a heat up mode, which then you can change your state for a short time to increase your abilities. It's all very simple enough, and so much so that I'm confident that anyone can pick up and play this game. And not only that, but enjoy themselves too. You can actually feel like you're in control and have everything in your hands. It's a fun fighting game for sure, and I really enjoyed beating the crap out of the computer. I'm not entirely sure how the balance is going to work out for this one. When playing with each of the characters, I could almost instantly get a sense of who I liked the best and who I could compete with. I really liked the original character Helen, as well as Curly from Cave Story. But the main problem was that I found it very easy to cheese matches if I really wanted to, spamming the same attacks over and over again and cornering the enemy so they couldn't get out of it. In competitive play against a real person, obviously this may not be the case, but against a computer I don't think it's entirely balanced. So guys, I want to know your thoughts on simplified fighting games. In the top right hand corner of the screen, there is a poll asking you if you prefer standard combo based multiple input for special move fighters, or do you enjoy the more simplified one button input kind of fighter? I'm very interested to know what the consensus is on this one. So there is a story mode which I previously talked about. There's an arcade mode which is basically the story mode just without the cutscenes. There's a versus mode which is what you would expect. There is a mission mode in which each character of the roster has a set number of challenges, usually involving you inputting the right moves in quick sequence. It's honestly nothing special, but it's mostly best for practicing and learning the characters. Speaking of which, there is a tutorial and a training mode too. It's very robust. Now, the online I'm sure you want to hear about, but sadly as much as I tried, I could not find anyone to play with. I don't know if it's because there's no matchmaking until release, or I was just the only reviewer searching for someone at those particular times. So yeah, I can't comment on how good the netcode is, sadly. It's a simple enough fighter though, so I can't imagine it being too difficult to get it running smoothly. If you're really interested to know about this, then add me on Twitter once the game is out, and I'll probably be leaving a couple of comments about how the netcode is. The visual style is lovely. It's pretty common amongst lower budget fighting games to go for the hand-drawn anime look, and in all honesty it looks much better than a realistic, more 3D art style in my opinion. Characters look fantastic. They have a 3D look with hand-drawn anime attributes, and I love it. Characters are huge and have a lot of visual weight to them, very solid looking, and I think the character designers have done a decent job of amalgamating different series with very different designs into one package. Shovel Knight, Binding of Isaac, and Code of Princess, those art styles do not go together, but somehow they've managed it in Blade Strangers. Some look better than others for sure, but mostly they've done a grand job slamming them together into a cohesive art style.
Isaac! Round one! Fight!
The audio is great. I do love these 2D Japanese fighters because they always have that awesome electric guitar solo to go with every single song. It's very prominent and it's rocking for sure. While awesome, I do lament the fact that because each of the track has gone for a similar style, it's difficult to differentiate them from each other. So every track just about sounds the same, which is unfortunate, but at least it sounds good, right? Blade Strangers comes in at $39.99, so it's on the higher end of Switch fighting games, but I think there's enough here to justify that price point if you're a fighting game fan. There's some decent production value gone into it with a story mode, some nice visuals and presentation, and the gameplay is top notch too, even for a casual audience. It's $10 cheaper than what I would say is its closest rival in BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, and it's a better game in my opinion. So yeah, I think it's decent value for your money. Overall, Blade Strangers is a top fighting game in my mind. It's more quaint than most fighters out there, but I actually enjoyed it more than many of the other fighters out on the Switch right at this moment. It's better for a casual audience, but the gameplay is still very enjoyable as you totally feel in control of what's going on. If you're looking for a modern fighting game on the Nintendo Switch, then Blade Strangers would probably be the one I point you towards at this point. It looks fantastic, has some fun characters to play as, and just about anyone can pick it up and play no problem. For me, Blade Strangers is an 8 out of 10. Okay guys, thank you ever so much for watching. If you're a regular Switch watcher, then leave a like and a comment telling us how you voted in the poll above. If you're new here and you enjoyed this review or found it useful in any way, be sure to subscribe for more reviews like this one, as well as gameplay footage and features once in a while. I'm sure you won't regret it. And finally, head over to the website switchwatch.co.uk. That's well worth a daily look. I've been Jordan from SwitchWatch, and I'll see you guys next time.
Oh, wait!